The email landed in my inbox at 2:17 a.m., the subject line a single word, urgent. It was from my biggest client, the one whose contract had kept my bakery afloat through its first year. "We're terminating our agreement," it read. "We've received evidence of financial misconduct tied to your business. Effective immediately." My heart stopped, the glow of my laptop screen blurring as the words sank in. Financial misconduct. I'd spent every waking hour building Harper's Hearth, my small bakery in Asheville, North Carolina, pouring my savings, my dreams, my life into it. And now, it was crumbling. The sender's name wasn't the client's usual contact, it was an alias, one I traced later that night to a burner account. But the signature at the bottom of the attached evidence was unmistakable: my brother, Ethan. "My name is Chloe, and at 34, I'd just learned my own sibling had tried to destroy everything I'd built. He thought he'd won, but he didn't know I'd turn his plan against him." Life before that email was a tapestry of hard work and quiet joy, woven together in the heart of Asheville, where the Blue Ridge Mountains cradled the city like a promise. Harper's Hearth was my sanctuary, a small bakery tucked between a bookstore and an art gallery, its brick walls warmed by the glow of string lights. Each morning, I'd rise at 4 a.m., my apartment above the shop still cloaked in darkness, to start the dough for our signature sourdough loaves. The air would fill with the scent of yeast and butter, mingling with the faint pine breeze that drifted through the open windows. By 7 a.m., the bakery hummed with life, locals sipping espresso at the counter, tourists marveling at my lavender macarons, their cameras clicking as they captured the pastel hues. My team, 3 bakers and 2 baristas, moved like a well-rehearsed dance, their banter echoing through the kitchen as we shaped croissants and piped frosting. There was Sarah, my head baker, who'd perfected our cinnamon rolls, and Jamal, the barista whose latte art drew crowds. Every day was a marathon, 12 hours of kneading, baking, and serving, but I loved it. This was my dream, built from scratch after years of saving, of skipping vacations and personal indulgences to invest in something that was mine. I'd pour coffee for regulars like Mrs. Callahan, who'd share stories of her grandkids, or brainstorm new recipes with Sarah late into the night, the kitchen glowing under fluorescent lights. Asheville's community embraced us, from the farmers who supplied our organic berries to the musicians who played acoustic sets on our patio during weekend markets. Harper's Hearth wasn't just a business, it was a home, a testament to my resilience after a lifetime of being the dependable one in a family that demanded more than it gave. Ethan, my younger brother by 3 years, was the opposite, a whirlwind of charm and ambition that never quite landed. Growing up in Raleigh, we'd been inseparable, sneaking cookies from the jar, building forts in the backyard, whispering secrets under the glow of a flashlight. He'd always been the dreamer, sketching plans for inventions or reciting movie lines with a grin that could melt anyone's defenses. But his dreams rarely survived reality. I'd watched him chase one venture after another, a food truck that never left the garage, a tech startup that collapsed under bad investments, a blog that fizzled after 3 posts. Each time, I was there, lending him money from my savings, proofreading his business plans, even baking cupcakes for his investor pitches. Our parents, retired and living comfortably on their pensions, adored him, their creative son who could do no wrong. They'd laugh off his failures, saying, "Ethan's just finding his way." Meanwhile, I was the steady one, the one who paid her bills on time, who helped with their mortgage when they downsized, who never asked for anything in return. Family dinners were a study in contrast, Ethan regaling everyone with tales of his latest, big idea, while my updates about the bakery were met with polite nods. "That's nice, Chloe," my mother would say, her eyes already back on Ethan. I didn't resent it, not consciously. I loved him, loved them, and believed family meant carrying each other's burdens. But looking back, I see the seeds of resentment in Ethan, the way his laughter grew sharper when I spoke of my success, the way he'd changed the subject when customers praised my work. Harper's Hearth was my triumph, but to him, it was a mirror reflecting his failures. The signs of Ethan's betrayal crept in like shadows, small enough to dismiss at first, but persistent. His visits to the bakery dwindled, his once frequent stops for coffee replaced by excuses about meetings or projects. When he did come by, his smiles were forced, his compliments laced with something bitter. "You're killing it, sis," he'd say, but his eyes would linger on the crowded tables, the line out the door, with a flicker of envy. I'd shrug it off, telling myself he was just stressed. His latest venture, a cryptocurrency scheme, had imploded, leaving him couch surfing at friends' apartments. But then the anomalies started. A supplier called, irate, claiming I'd missed 2 payments, though I'd sent the checks myself. I apologized, assuming a clerical error, and overnight replacements, but the knot in my stomach tightened. A week later, a customer posted a 1-star review on Yelp, claiming food poisoning from a spicy quiche we'd never served. I spent hours responding, offering a refund, but the reviewer never replied, and the account was deleted days later. My accountant, Mia, flagged irregularities in our books, small transfers, $50 here, $100 there, siphoned to an unknown account over months. "It's odd," she said, her brow furrowed. "Almost like someone's testing the system." I'd lie awake at night, the hum of the bakery's refrigerator below my apartment a constant reminder of what was at stake, my mind racing. Was I paranoid? Overworked? Then, 3 weeks before the email, I overheard Ethan on the phone during one of his rare visits. "She's too busy to notice," he said, his voice low, before stepping outside. I brushed it off, but the unease grew. 2 weeks later, I found a text on his phone when he left it on the counter. "She's too busy to notice," it read again, sent to someone named Jay. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, the bakery's espresso machine hissing in the background. I didn't confront him. I needed more than a hunch. I needed proof. That 2:17 a.m. email was the moment everything shattered. I sat at my kitchen table, the scent of vanilla from the bakery below now heavy and oppressive, my laptop screen casting stark shadows across the room. The email's attachments were a gut punch, forged invoices, doctored bank statements, all designed to paint me as a thief stealing from my own business. Ethan's signature was scrawled across each document, his looping handwriting as familiar as the recipes taped to my kitchen wall. He'd sent this to my biggest client, the Blue Ridge Hotel Group, whose weekly orders for pastries and breakfast trays accounted for 40% of my revenue. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a calculated strike at my livelihood, my reputation, my dream. I reread the email, my hands trembling, the words blurring as tears threatened to spill. Ethan, my brother, the boy I'd protected from bullies, the one I'd lent my last $500 to when his car broke down, he'd done this. Out of jealousy, spite, or some twisted need to pull me down to his level. Every instinct screamed to call him, to demand answers, to let the hurt pour out in a flood of accusations. But I didn't. I'd spent my life cleaning up his messes, bailing him out, believing family came first. This time, I'd protect myself. Ethan thought he'd broken me, but he'd only lit a fire I didn't know I had. The pain was a living thing, clawing at my chest as I sat there in the pre-dawn silence. I thought of our childhood, the summer we built a treehouse in our backyard, hammering nails until our hands blistered, promising to be best friends forever. I remembered the night he'd cried in my dorm room after flunking out of college, my arms around him as I whispered, "You'll figure it out." I'd always been his safety net, his cheerleader, even when our parents' favoritism cast him as the star and me as the stagehand. Now, those memories felt tainted, each one a reminder of the brother I'd loved and the stranger he'd become. Jealousy, I realized, wasn't a fleeting emotion for Ethan, it was a poison, seeping into every word, every glance, until it drove him to this. I wanted to hate him, to erase him from my heart, but the grief was too deep, tangled with love and betrayal. I called my best friend, Lila, at 6 a.m., my voice shaking as I told her everything. "He's your brother," she said, her shock mirroring mine. "How could he do this?" I didn't have an answer, but her words grounded me. I wasn't alone. I had my team, my customers, my dream. Giving in to despair would hand Ethan the victory he didn't deserve. By the time the sun rose, painting the mountains in shades of gold, I was calm, my resolve like a blade honed sharp. I wouldn't let his sabotage define me. I'd turn it into his reckoning. I started with the evidence, my marketing instincts kicking in like a reflex. The forged documents were amateurish, riddled with errors, dates that didn't align with my accounting software, bank account numbers that led to dead ends. Ethan wasn't as smart as he thought, his arrogance his first mistake. I called Mia, my accountant, before the bakery opened, my voice steady despite the sleepless night. I need a full audit of every transaction from the past year, I said. Focus on anything tied to Ethan. He's had access to the shop, maybe even our systems. Mia's silence spoke volumes, but she agreed, promising to dig deep. Next, I contacted Rachel Patel, my lawyer, who'd helped me navigate the legal maze of starting Harper's Hearth. I emailed her the forged documents, the screenshot of Ethan's text, and a detailed account of the email. "This is fraud," Rachel said over the phone, her voice sharp with indignation. "If we can tie him to the email, we've got a strong case for civil damages, possibly criminal charges." The word criminal hit me like a punch, but it also felt just. Ethan had crossed a line, and family didn't excuse betrayal. I spent the morning with Mia, combing through bank records at her cluttered office, the scent of her jasmine tea mixing with the stale air. We found more, transfers to an account linked to Ethan's crypto venture, disguised as vendor payments. Each discovery was a wound, but also a weapon. I wasn't just fighting for my business, I was fighting for the truth. The turning point came when I traced the burner email. I'd taken a cybersecurity course last year, a precaution against phishing scams targeting small businesses, and it became my lifeline. Sitting at my desk, the bakery quiet after closing, I analyzed the email's metadata, my laptop humming softly. The IP address led to Brood Awakening, a coffee shop Ethan haunted, its exposed beams and chalkboard menus a backdrop to his hustle. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was a thread I could pull. Then, I checked our bakery's Wi-Fi logs, a system I'd installed to track customer usage for marketing. Ethan had connected his laptop the night the email was sent, his device's MAC address logged at 1:45 a.m., just minutes before the timestamp. My breath caught, a mix of triumph and disbelief washing over me. He'd used my own network to sabotage me, thinking it would hide his tracks. It was the kind of careless mistake only someone blinded by ego would make. I saved the logs, my fingers trembling as I backed them up to a secure drive. But doubt crept in. What if I was wrong? What if confronting him tore our family apart forever? I pushed the thoughts aside, remembering the forged signatures, the lies. Ethan had made his choice, and now I'd make mine. I had the key to his downfall, and I was ready to turn it. Over the next week, I moved with the precision of a chess player, each step a counter to Ethan's betrayal. I scheduled a meeting with Laura Bennett, the CEO of the Blue Ridge Hotel Group, at their sleek downtown office, the city skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. My team rallied behind me, Sarah staying late to bake samples for the meeting, Jamal crafting a special espresso blend to impress. I dressed carefully, a navy blazer over my usual jeans, my nerves tempered by resolve. "I've been a victim of fraud," I told Laura, laying out the forged documents, the IP trace, the Wi-Fi logs. "My brother sent this to ruin me, but I'm taking legal action." Laura, a woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness, studied the evidence, her expression shifting from skepticism to concern. "This is serious, Chloe," she said. "We'll need to verify, but if this holds, we'll reinstate your contract." She offered to issue a public statement supporting Harper's Hearth, a gesture that felt like a lifeline. I didn't tell Ethan, letting him believe his plan was succeeding. Rachel, meanwhile, drafted a cease and desist letter, its language stark and unyielding, demanding Ethan stop all fraudulent activity or face a lawsuit. I had it delivered to his cramped apartment, picturing his shock as he opened it, his usual swagger crumbling. Then came the strategic play. Ethan had been pitching a meal kit startup to investors, boasting about a meeting with Pinnacle Ventures, a major firm in Charlotte. I'd heard him at a family dinner, his voice loud with false confidence as he described his game-changing idea. But I had an ace, Claire Nguyen, a Pinnacle partner and a Harper's Hearth regular. She'd stop by every Saturday for my lemon tarts, her warm smile a fixture in my mornings. I invited her for coffee at the bakery, the air thick with the scent of fresh bread, and shared the truth over steaming mugs. Ethan's been spreading lies about my business, I said, handing her a folder with the forged documents and Wi-Fi logs. I'd hate for anyone to invest in someone who'd do this. Claire's eyes narrowed, her fingers tapping the folder. I know him, she said. He's been pitching us hard. I'll make sure this gets to the right people. I nodded, my heart pounding with quiet triumph. Ethan's pitch was over before it began, and he'd never see it coming. The consequences hit Ethan like a storm. He called me the next day, his voice a jagged mix of rage and panic. You're suing me, Chloe. Your own brother. This is insane. I let him vent, his words a desperate attempt to reclaim control. When he paused, I spoke, my tone cold and unwavering. You forged documents to destroy my business, Ethan. You lied to my clients, stole from me. Did you think I'd just take it? He faltered, his bravado cracking. I didn't mean to hurt you. You've got everything, and I'm drowning. I needed a win. I laughed, the sound sharp and hollow. You had my love, my support, my trust. You chose to burn it all down. Now you face the consequences. I hung up, my hands shaking but my resolve ironclad. Claire's firm rejected his pitch, citing ethical concerns, and the news spread like wildfire in Asheville's business community. Other investors backed away, leaving his startup a pipe dream. The hotel group issued their statement, praising Harper's Hearth's integrity and boosting our contract by 20%. Friends who'd once bought Ethan's charm now distanced themselves, their texts to me filled with disbelief. He's not who we thought, one wrote. My parents called, their voices heavy with regret. We didn't realize, Chloe, my mother said. He said you were blowing it out of proportion. I didn't argue. They'd always chosen him, but I was done seeking their approval. The aftermath was a mix of victory and shadow. I poured my energy into Harper's Hearth, creating new recipes, chai-spiced scones, matcha croissants, that drew lines out the door. Customers rallied around us, their support a warm embrace. Mrs. Callahan brought her book club, their laughter filling the shop as they debated novels over coffee. A local blogger featured our new peach tart, calling it Asheville's best-kept secret. But the betrayal lingered, surfacing in quiet moments. I'd see Ethan's old coffee mug in the break room and feel a pang, or find a childhood photo of us at the beach, his grin wide and unguarded. I grieved the brother I'd lost, not the man he'd become. Lila stopped by often, dragging me to trivia nights at the brewery, reminding me I had a life beyond the bakery. My team became my anchor, Sarah's steady presence, Jamal's quick wit. Mia uncovered more of Ethan's tampering, transfers totaling $3,000, and we sent the evidence to Rachel. She filed a civil suit for fraud, seeking damages for lost revenue and emotional distress. Ethan tried to negotiate, sending a rambling email promising to fix things. I didn't respond. He'd face justice in court, not through empty words. My parents pleaded with me to drop the case, their voices strained. He's struggling, Chloe, my father said. I met his gaze through the phone, unflinching. He tried to ruin me. Where was family when he signed those lies? Their silence was answer enough. Financially, Ethan was unraveling. The lawsuit drained his savings, and without investors, he couldn't afford his apartment. He moved back to our parents' house in Raleigh, a 31-year-old man surrounded by posters from his teenage years. Our parents stopped calling, their loyalty to him a wall I no longer tried to climb. Harper's Hearth, meanwhile, soared. The magazine feature brought tourists from across the state, and I hired 2 new bakers, both young women with a passion for pastry. We launched a catering service, supplying desserts for weddings and corporate events, the orders pouring in faster than we could bake. I faced challenges, supply chain delays, a burst pipe in the shop, but each hurdle felt surmountable with my team by my side. The ache of Ethan's betrayal faded, replaced by pride in what I'd fought for. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, my dream stronger for the battle it had endured. A year later, I stood in the new Harper's Hearth Cafe, its grand opening a celebration of everything I'd built. The space was bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a mural of the Blue Ridge Mountains painted by a local artist. Students crowded the tables, their laptops open as they sipped lattes and nibbled blueberry muffins. The original shop was busier than ever, its brick walls now lined with awards and framed reviews. The lawsuit had ended with a $25,000 judgment against Ethan, money he'd borrowed from our parents, who'd sold their second car to cover it. They hadn't spoken to me since, their absence a choice I'd learned to accept. At a regional business conference, I gave a keynote on resilience, sharing my story to a packed auditorium. I spoke of betrayal, not with anger, but with clarity, describing how I'd turned a sibling's sabotage into a catalyst for growth. A young entrepreneur approached me afterward, her voice trembling. "You showed me I can protect my dreams," she said. I smiled, thinking of the email, the Wi-Fi logs, the moment I chose myself. "You can," I told her. "You just have to know your worth." That night, I locked up the cafe, the mountains a dark silhouette against the starry sky. I walked to my apartment, the scent of fresh bread still clinging to my clothes, and stood on my balcony, the city lights twinkling below. Ethan's jealousy had meant to shatter me, but it had forged something unbreakable. I'd turned his plan against him, not with malice, but with the strength of someone who'd learned to value herself. Harper's Hearth was more than a bakery, it was a legacy, proof that no one, not even family, could steal my light. I thought of the customers who'd become friends, the team who'd become family, the community that had lifted me up. Ethan was a shadow now, a cautionary tale of what happens when envy consumes you. My parents' silence was their loss, not mine. As I sipped a glass of wine, the mountain air cool against my skin, I felt a profound peace. I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal, and it was mine, irrevocably. What do you do when someone tries to tear down your dreams? You rebuild them taller, stronger, and you make sure the world knows your name.